Hello, and welcome to the Albright Scholar for April 2020. My name is John Pankratz. I teach history at Albright, and each month it's my privilege to welcome BCTV viewers and residents of Greater Reading to take a glimpse inside our learning community up here on North 13th Street, to look at the work being done by teachers and students, and to think about its impact on all of us. Well, April 2020. This is a very unusual time in the history of the college, in the history of our community, in the history of the world. I thought, thanks to BCTV and its heroic staff, we're able to bring you a program collected through many minds in separate locations through the Zoom facility. And we're going to be talking about the current crisis, the current medically induced coma that American society is in right now, and the ways in which Albright is, the many different ways in which Albright is dealing with this. My guests represent a range of perspective. I have Dr. Rob Seasongood, Professor of Religious Studies and Associate Provost for Freshman First Year Experience, Professor Beth Keister, Professor of Sociology, one of our most active faculty members and a frequent guest on the Albright Scholar, Adam Owens, Professor of Business and Marketing, and then a faculty son, Holden Rice, currently a high school student and a very active participant in the Science Research Institute at Albright College. And he's going to talk about some of the projects that he's had to support our healthcare professionals here in Berks County. So different perspectives. Rob, you're busy teaching in a new way.
Can
you tell us about how that transition has gone for you?
For me, in terms of switching the classes, it's been really a challenge. It's one of those moments where you think no matter how good you think you are with technology, you're probably not. There's been something about this that has been really humbling and really frustrating at times, but also really satisfying when you do make certain kinds of connections. So we took all of our courses that were going on during our day program, which were face-to-face courses that was over 430 different classes.
Yep.
And our faculty, in the space of a week, transitioned those classes over to a format that could be delivered through like a distance modality, through an electronic modality. So they used some of our existing software we're going to talk about LMS, a learning management system, a course platform that goes with each class, sort of a web page for each course, as well as learning technologies like the one we're using right now, Zoom and some others, to collaborate with students and find creative ways to work around. We had probably 75% of our classes ready to flip and nearly done within the week of spring break, with the last little bit being the ones that are always the trick. And, labs, workshops, theater, collaborative places, studio courses, those are the more challenging ones to move at the end. But we have made a transition. It's really, I think, in some ways been really exciting to be part of, not only with my own class, but working to help colleagues. And what I think is one of the most transformative, in terms of scale, probably one of the most transformative moments in higher education, or in education period.
Yeah, it's been remarkable, and it's ongoing. I think
it happened mid-month.
I'm learning something every day, and being a little braver and a little more creative each week as well.
Yeah.
Beth, the transition wasn't that hard for you, right?
Well, it wasn't as difficult for me as it was for, I know, some of my colleagues. I already have an online class that I offer in our interim in January. And I've also offered it for the adult online program in the evenings. So I was already pretty familiar with some of the things our learning management system could do. I just some of the different ways to engage. I'm already sort of studied and practiced in ways to get students to engage with me, with the material, with each other. That being said, I didn't build my current courses as online courses.
Right.
And so it was still making a huge shift. So technologically, I maybe didn't have quite as many obstacles. But for, you mentioned the lab courses, I teach statistics, and they had a lab component with that. And I had to, with software that is institutional. It's not something you can ask students to buy. And so I had to come up with a way, was I going to eliminate it? How was I going to replicate it? And worked with some of my other colleagues who also teach statistics that were going with the same thing. What a lot of us decided to do is we're printing the output that they would normally have to generate themselves, and asking them, they still have to spend the time interpreting it and understanding what the output means. Math is not the easiest thing to just switch to a Word document or a PowerPoint when you're dealing with big formulas and Greek letters and fractions. So I went out and purchased myself a large whiteboard so I could continue to teach statistics in the way that I'm the most comfortable with.
Good. And Adam, of course, you're an old hand at remote learning, aren't you?
Yeah, I mentioned you all, just a bit of background. I kind of started before I was teaching. I was an administrator, and essentially my job was sales and online, and getting begrudging face-to-face faculty who had wanted nothing to do with online. My job and my job security depended on me convincing people this was the modality to go with. So I started teaching online while I was also selling that stuff at 2 institutions ago. And so I started teaching it online, and I've always I wanted to teach face-to-face. That was really where I wanted to be. So I was really happy to transition away from online. And but I've kept a lot of the kind of best practices for online, in the courses that I built. So all, assignment submissions were in Moodle. Everything was kind of built to the Quality Matters standards which is essentially, can someone easily navigate the course and understand where to go? So when we flipped, this semester was pretty easy because the courses I'm teaching just so happen to also be courses where we're not doing a lot of site visits, because in business I like to take students out as much as I can to go visit places. And in the fall term, teaching sport marketing, and we go out to the Reading Phillies and the Reading Royals and Body Zone and visit these sites, which is obviously would be hindered by this. But this course that I'm teaching this semester were pretty easy to flip over. And I'm using the Zoom platform here to basically keep all of my synchronous classes still meeting synchronously. And I'm not a huge fan of online quizzes and, some of the limitations of the social interactions and the personal connections in the online format, but it wasn't a difficult transition. It's not my favorite modality, but it's definitely working.
Good. Now, Holden, is your high school still up and running? I know you're not meeting in physically, but
yeah, we're still up and running digitally, online learning. We have these flexible instruction days, which were instituted at the beginning of the school year. Mm-hmm. And our school was one of only a couple in the state, and the only one in Berks County, that got approved for these flexible instructional days, which can count by the state as actual school days, but were made more along the lines of snow days and other school closures. So we've been running those and counting for the state as school days, except online, where we're assigned all our work.
Right. It's April and it's a beautiful day outside. I don't think we're going to have any snow days this year.
No, we didn't.
And so the natural disaster of the spread of the COVID virus has taken the place of meteorological challenges, I guess. Now, I mentioned earlier that, Holden, you're still in high school, but you've been a participant in the Science Research Institute at Albright College that grew out of Conrad Weiser High School and then has found a new home at Albright and is reaching out to hundreds of high school students and engaging them in research. And you're actually doing something practical to meet the needs of our healthcare community.
Yeah. So as some of you may know, this winter, SRI, previously based out of Conrad Weiser High School where I go, partnered with Albright College, and the founder of SRI and the director, Adele Shade, who is at Albright the dean of pre-college and summer programs. She has this brainchild of hers, which is the Berks PPE Resource Network. So this network is relatively new, and it just rose up a couple of weeks ago. We have a shortage for personal protective equipment,
right.
And she came up with the idea of people who have 3D printers at home, like myself, sharing an open source file for these face visor masks that can be made at home. Yeah. And here's one of them, 3D printed. It'll go over your head like so. And this is the 3D printed component, and they get a clear plastic visor that will shield your face. And those are also donated. So we have all of these independent people with 3D printers who are producing these and dropping them off to the resource network, where they will be combined with the donated shields and film components to complete them. And then they will be distributed to all organizations within need. So we have first responders and firefighters, and they're going, even civilians, they're going all around. I believe as of a couple of days ago, the combined efforts produced 2,800 face shields distributed to 62 organizations.
Oh, that's fabulous. So your home has become a factory.
Yes, it has. I've got 3 3D printers all running 24/7, producing these masks. I'm producing a little over 100 per week.
Oh my goodness, how wonderful. Thank you for that. I'm sure a lot of health professionals who are on the front line risking their own health are appreciative of that protection.
Yeah.
Goodness. Do they come in different colors?
Yeah, we have whatever colors the consumable filament used by the 3D printers comes on rolls. This is a PLA plastic, polylactic acid, but it's just this strand of filament which is made by the printer into the finished masks. So you'll see variations of all different colors. I have a shade of blue here. I have a different shade of blue from a different roll of filament, but that's not really much. What you see from different people with different printers, I have 4 or 5 different colors of ones I've been producing on the different printers, and they're all different, a different rainbow of colors, and it's pretty cool to see them all come together.
And all highly functional and
Yep.
so very helpful. That's great. Thanks for that. Now, Rob, we've talked about the sort of delivery of online education. Let's think a little bit about the reception as well. This is not easy for our students. Our students come to Albright College because they're interested in that face-to-face atmosphere, the richness of in-class discussion, and all of a sudden they're put back at their home in most cases. I should mention there are about 130 students who have continued residency at Albright. They're in the dorms. They are receiving 3 meals a day from the cafeteria, not eating in the cafeteria, but receiving their meals and taking them back to their dorms.
It's very monastic, actually.
And they're leading fairly lonely lives, but they're safe and they're cared for. But the rest of our students are back in their home situations, and that's not always necessarily set up like a classroom, is it?
No, and the place from which I'm having to do administrative and teaching work isn't exactly set up like a like my campus office either.
No.
And there's all sorts of challenges that we've all had to deal with of learning to have recordings that work around the dog barking at the post, or in and around. I know there are a number of faculty that have very small children at home. We have a 4th grader at home who is at the age where he can be somewhat, set him up and let him work on his schoolwork on his own computer and device, but he still needs some help. It's a challenge for everybody in terms of having a space to put your attention, just like it was a challenge to move your course. And it's not the kind of teaching that a lot of us really wanted to do. I think there's been some trepidation I've heard from some faculty and seen in other places about worrying that, this might mean once this once this online education catches on, some bean counting administrator is going to discover that it's a much more effective and efficient way to teach. And I think actually what a lot of people are realizing is that there are some really, really useful ways to interact online that could augment a face-to-face course. But man, it's just not as pleasant. I'm already to the point where I got screen fatigue. I get tired of logging in myself. It's hard. And we're hitting a stretch right now where I think a lot of our courses had some early push where students were getting in and figuring out how to make things work and getting going, and everyone was really committed. But, we have several more weeks yet of the semester, so it's going to take some time and energy to keep everybody together and keep everybody moving forward. This is not what anybody wanted. Our provost, Karen Campbell, had I thought, a gorgeous metaphor for this, where she was reminding everybody as they were thinking about their classes that this is not a move. We're not like moving houses. This is an evacuation. So you really have to take what you can. You can't take all the things that the wonderful, beautiful things that you had, and even the things worth preserving. You just simply can't. You have to take what you can carry in one suitcase. So you have to figure out how to put this educational component in here in a way that you can carry it right now so that we can come back later after the storm's gone and clean up what's left. And I think that's kind of where we all are. I think we're realizing that, compassion and the role of compassion with one another, with ourselves, with our students, I think it's helpful for our faculty and administrators to run into things that we can't figure out either.
Yep, I agree.
So those were
very real in my classes. I had a student who, sometimes they're supposed to be muted. We're doing these big Zoom sessions, and just the other day, the mom, I guess she was doing the Zoom from the kitchen, and the mom was like, "When are you going to go out to the store? We really need XYZ." So I found her and muted her, but I think this is they're facing these real challenges, and I've had students email me. I share a room with my 11-year-old brother who's jumping off the walls, and it's really hard for me. And I think those are just small examples, like what Rob was saying. Like it's difficult for everybody for this transition. Some people, I have another student who's, picking up work again. She had previously worked at an Amazon distribution center, and I think everybody's trying to pitch in and help their families as they can with work that they can find. So really feeling for a lot of the students that are struggling with internet connectivity and just a comfortable place to work. It's tough for them.
Yeah, I tell students all the time for general education that every course teaches 3 levels. You've got the content of the course, which is the most obvious thing that you're taking. But then you've got sort of beyond that, the skill set for the course, the way of thinking, the talents that go along with it. So like a stats course or a comps course, the content is writing or mathematics. The next skill set is time management and project management and orderly thinking and the process of revision. But then underneath all of that, there's a third layer that's really about sort of fundamental character growth of grit and determination and learning workarounds and learning to keep moving. And in a lot of ways, when we flipped the courses, it flipped exactly that. The content has now become somewhat the delivery device for the real lesson, which is about the grit and the determination and the resilience.
And waking up in the morning to a life that's not what any of us would wish, and finding the courage to go on.
Right.
Yeah, it has been a real challenge, I think, for so many people.
And one of the things that we're moving into right now that we've never done online is advising, where once a semester we meet with our students to a minimum of one time a semester. We meet with them face to face, help them figure out how this semester is going, how to finish successfully, also how to move into the fall, and that has been something that I've actually found. I was, again, really nervous about how is that going to translate, using a lot of Zoom, using some new calendaring software that's integrating my calendar and their calendar and the Zoom meetings and things like that. And I found it really refreshing as a way to get to, see some of them face to face, really do that check-in about, are you safe? Are you healthy? Are you working? Yeah. Do you think your employer is keeping you safe? What kind of, bandwidth issues are you having at home? And so far, I've only really been in heavy advising for about 2 days. I'll hit some more next week. Everybody's got a smile. Everybody understands the world's in this together. And they appreciate that teaching online is hard, as long as the professors recognize that learning online is just as hard as switching to teaching online. And they're tough. They're getting through. One of the things that made me smile the most this week was I have a cat. And for anybody who has cats, they know that cats can't be trained. Cats can't be told what to do. And my cat knows when it's time to come walk in front of the camera. He isn't around today, so that's good. And he premiered in a video. I was trying to teach them about stats and would just not stay away. So he paced the whiteboard. But then for that lesson, the homework that was due, I had students who were doodling pictures of my cat on their homework. And I'm like, you watched the video. It was just things like that were just really great. That we're still able to kind of connect with our students. I've had really good luck with getting all of mine to respond, keeping them in the boat, and realizing we're just sort of all in this together, and we're all just going to get through it together.
I think we do have the advantage that the world is pretty boring right now. So these Zoom sessions actually can be kind of fun. I had a student in the first week of class who actually, they were chatting in the chat box, and I don't think they knew I was watching it. And one of them was like, this is actually really fun, because some of them started heckling each other in the chat box because like one's dog would jump on the screen. And so they're kind of talking. I don't think they knew if I was looking at it. But I do think we're kind of in this state where everybody's so hungry for a little bit of social interaction that they'll take it even if they have to listen to me talk through it. But I noticed I had an assignment where for intro to marketing, and they have to produce a 15 or 30-second commercial for their favorite brand. So they have to shoot a video, and then I teach them how to use a video editing tool to make a commercial out of it. And they were the best I've gotten ever, because I think they're kind of bored, and they actually took the time to storyboard what their commercial was going to be, and by and large the whole section produced better work than I had seen on that assignment in previous semesters, which was refreshing. And it was also cool because a lot of them, we went through them and watched them as a class, and they had their brothers as co-stars, and the sister was the camera person, and it was kind of cool to see them doing this. They almost got their family involved in some of this assignment. So there are some upsides to it, which has been interesting to see, like those personal connections.
Yeah. The whole question of marketing is an interesting one, because we're all worried about the hit that the economy has taken and what the future holds for that. And I see email ads for clothing and stuff like that, and I'm thinking, no, I don't need to buy new clothes. Nobody ever sees me.
That's a desperate pitch for so many of these things right now.
Yeah, and it makes you realize that now that we have an economy of just the basics of life and the essentials of life, that so much of the American economy is devoted to discretionary buying. And your work as a marketer is trying to get people to spend money on things that they don't absolutely have to have.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's kind of a look back to, like, you're a historian, so you probably have more context, but times have been pretty good in this economy for a while. Not everyone is doing wonderfully, but when you look at it now compared to what it was 2 months ago, nobody even realized how much discretionary income there was being spent on different websites and different things that may seem
going out to dinner.
Yeah, exactly. And even students, they're on tight budgets, but a lot of their favorite brands are always fashion brands and sneaker products and things that, when a situation like this comes in and food becomes your number one priority, it really shines a light on how different things have become. And it changes your look at marketing, because you see that, oh gosh, it was really silly that we were being convinced to buy this stuff because of this reason or that reason.
Yeah. Is any of you keeping a journal, a kind of record of your own thoughts and feelings during this period?
I am. I don't journal because it seems like one of those completely thankless tasks. But I started because I was like, man, I'm going to want to remember how bizarre this is. And so I've only probably in the past 30 days journaled 3 days, but I feel like even those 3 journal entries are going to be super interesting. But I don't want to dominate. But I'm not a journaler, but because it hurts to do. But it is going to be very interesting to go back and look at those.
Well, I tell you, as a professor of history, sometimes I have to convince students that we're living through history in the present day in the same way that people in the past lived through history. I don't have to convince them now. We very much feel tangibly that we're living through a very challenging epoch, and we'll see what happens on the other end of it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have a parenting and technology class, which has been actually kind of fun to flip because I already had them doing some more technology-based things. They were already keeping journals, but they're keeping them via websites. So they've all got their own websites, and I'm watching those obviously transition to more, global pandemic-related entries. For them that are keeping relevant. And so that's a project that actually has gone uninterrupted because they'd already built these websites and they were already doing the journaling. It's interesting, Rob was sort of talking about we have to decide what to keep and what to get rid of. And I actually have a section, because I do this parenting and technology class, we do a section on things like screen-free parenting and taken some materials that Adam himself has been a part of, and we talk about the concerns of parents who are raising kids in a world that is so full of screens.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually got rid of that section because I didn't for this time.
I'm not offended.
Because thinking about being screen-free right now didn't feel very resonating. And instead I've replaced it with what are we using technology to replace in this time? We did a section on what online dating apps are doing in a time when you can't hook up, what churches are doing to stay connected when churches can't meet. And things like medical crises when family members can't be with each other when somebody does pass in the hospital. They can't. We're not holding funerals or memorials right now. And so how are families using technology to stay connected in times of crisis?
Yeah.
And that's been a lot more relevant than talking about how to go screen free at a time when we can't turn our computers off. And the students seem to have really liked that.
Oh, I think so. I think many of our students are going through just the sorts of crises that you're talking about, and understand that very deeply. We're down to our final minute here. Now, Holden, are you a junior or senior at Conrad Weiser?
I'm actually a freshman at Conrad Weiser, believe it or not.
Oh, goodness sakes. Okay. So you're not missing the senior prom or something like that?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Well, I think I want to finish today's program with a shout out to the class of 2020, whether it's at high school or whether at Albright College. And I know we all feel for them. This is a moment of culmination. It's a moment in which you have those final experiences with your peer groups, and very often capstone experiences in terms of your own research or artistic achievement. And of course, the class of 2020 has been deprived of so many of those experiences, and it's going to toughen them, but it's the toughness that comes from a real wound. So our hearts go out to them. Our hearts go out to those first responders and medical personnel who are working so hard. I want to thank the staff at giant supermarkets and all the other establishments that are trying to keep life together for us. And I'm very, very grateful to the four of you for joining me on this edition of the Albright Scholar. Thank you for watching. And I think the schedule is that we will see each other again next month on another Zoom edition of the Albright Scholar. Good night. Turn off the recording.